We've all heard that old saying that it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill, and while it's obviously a little more complicated than that in practice, I've always wondered what 10,000 hours of drawing actually looks like. So when I first started drawing in 2017, I vowed to archive everything. Over the last 7 years, I've filled over 10,000 pages across 70 sketchbooks, 2,000 plus digital canvases, and tracked 5,500 hours of drawing time from when I was a complete beginner to where I am today. This is what 10,000 hours of drawing actually looks like. Let's start from the beginning, my very first sketchbook. You might notice we're starting slightly before 2017. In the interest of transparency, I'm including everything, including what I'll call my pre or early artist days. I never drew on loose paper, and I didn't have any background in drawing prior to starting with this one. Kind of, there's a small caveat there. I did draw a little as a kid, but those moments were so few and far between, I can kind of count them on my hands, they were so infrequent. And it'll become painfully obvious that I wasn't born with some innate talent or that I secretly put thousands of hours of practice in beforehand, because these drawings are going to be rough for a long time. When I said I was going to show off the entire artist journey, I meant that very literally. I've scanned or photographed every single piece of paper and backed up every digital canvas I've ever made even a tiny scribble on. A bit neurotic maybe, but I wanted it to be genuine and unfiltered. There are pages that needed to be cut every now and then, either because they had phone numbers or addresses or some other way that I could have doxed myself, but for the very few that care about the nitty-gritty details like that, notes on all of that will be in the description and at the end of the video. A few more quick notes. This video is essentially just a slideshow from start to finish. There isn't any other way to reasonably display the crazy volume of art on display here. So naturally, this video is never gonna pull crazy numbers on YouTube. It's just gonna be too boring for the average person, which is totally fair. Nobody asked for this, so there's no audience for it, but it's something I always wished existed and have been dreaming about making since about 2019. So for the few people out there who feel the same as me, here you go. The whole video is in 4K, so if there's specific drawings you want to see in higher detail, just flick that setting on and zoom your screen in. It took forever to render, but this way I don't need to worry about losing my sketchbooks in a fire or another hard drive corrupting. They're up here, safely backed up forever on YouTube. In the description and along the bottom of the video player, you'll find timestamps for each noteworthy milestone, every 1,000 hours of progress, the start of each new year, the individual sketchbooks, and just anything else I think is worth highlighting. Feel free to jump around as much as you wanna and see that progress happening in a matter of seconds instead of over the course of 3 hours. I've also tried my best to cut out other people's work whenever possible, but every now and then one will have slipped through the cracks on a digital canvas. If I copied one in for reference while I was drawing, for example, there's a chance it'll still be there in the video. It should be obvious which ones aren't mine, but feel free to call it out in the comments below. Most of this video is just gonna be me podcasting about the art journey, what I've learned, biggest regrets, and all of that sort of stuff. At some point down the line, I'll make a condensed version of this that's punchier, faster, more exciting editing, but I wanted to make sure that this unfiltered version was out there first, because younger me would have killed to have a resource like this for reference. Even if only for the reassurance that, yeah, learning to draw is really hard and you're not alone in it feeling like it's taking forever, and that constant feeling of I should be better than this by now, etc. But I'll get to all of that in a minute. The final thing to note, this isn't meant to be impressive or a tutorial on how to learn fast, nothing like that. It's not a guide on here's what your art should look like at 1,000 hours, 2,000, etc. All of this very literally is my entire journey. Yours will look drastically different, and to be honest, there's a good shot you'll improve way faster than I did anyway. But I could also be totally wrong in saying that. I have a big bias against myself here, because looking back, I see all the things I was doing wrong so clearly that it's kind of painful and pretty embarrassing to show off to the world. There's so many art progress videos out there that rise to the top because they sell you the dream of you too can master drawing in a month, but all of these videos are missing context, even the best faith ones. That's kind of just the nature of entertainment. A good story doesn't care about facts, and it shouldn't either. That's not the goal of those videos. They're there to entertain you or inspire you or to get you to pick up a pencil for the first time and discover a skill you never would have realized you could love so much. There's a ton that those videos get right, but accuracy and context by nature will never really be one of them, and vice versa. A video like this might be super honest and accurate, but it'll never be as exciting or inspiring, at least to the average person, because let's face it, it's not glamorous to show off the tens of thousands of crappy drawings that led you to the tiniest little bit of progress, and honestly sometimes they leave you feeling like you've regressed as well, but nobody's gonna put all of that into a short 10-minute video because it wouldn't be any fun to watch. Even if you're gonna focus on the downsides, the absolute pits of the artist journey, you're gonna tell that story in a way that leaves people feeling hopeful or inspired somehow. Anyway, I hope you like the sound of my voice well enough because there's a lot of ground to cover here and I want to avoid just posting a slideshow set to music as much as possible. You could always just mute the video and have it up on a second screen while you draw along to it. I don't know, you do you. In the meantime, I'm just going to bounce between random topics as they come to mind. First up, those old drawings from when I was a kid. I do have those still actually, but they probably didn't make it into this video, so I guess there's a slight lie there in the entire journey bit, but I'll probably make a video down the line with those. Or maybe I ended up tacking them onto the end of the video after recording all of this voiceover. I don't know, man. They're a bit scattered around and don't add that much to the story of my whole artist journey anyway, at least as far as the progress from beginner to where I am now goes. Speaking of where I am now, at the start of all of this, I would have guessed that to become a great artist like all the artists I admired, my guess would have been it'd take, I don't know, a few hundred, maybe a low few thousand hours. I didn't have any reference point for this because at least in 2019, I couldn't find a single artist who had done any sort of hours tracking project like this before. So my low thousands hours guess was kind of just based off of vibes. In hindsight, yeah, it takes a lot longer than that, but it's hard to say how long it'd take other people to reach a similar point in their journey where I am now. Not that you can one-to-one compare art skill between artists anyway, but you can probably get a general feel for their skill level or their grasp of the fundamentals just based off of the vibe of their drawings. I have seen a few people in the last year or so actually make some pretty similar videos, Ori days or at 10,000 hours on YouTube, for example. But like I said before, any examples I've found have been missing a ton of context. They're either showing the highlight reel or their starting point isn't actually absolute zero, which is fine, it's just not the full picture. And others actually, like PewDiePie, that do seem to start from absolute zero in the drawing department, still see rapid progress to the point of being unbelievable. And to be clear, I do 100% believe in the progress he shows off in his current drawing progression series. It's really inspiring to see how fast you can learn with the right approach. But PewDiePie did also come into art at a later age, meaning he had all that life experience beforehand to help him learn faster. A flaw that I had in my logic in the early days was I thought getting better was all about mileage, and to a degree that's true. I don't think any level of smart practice is going to see you go from beginner to pro riot level artist in just 500 hours, for example. But the skills you pick up in the rest of your life have an immeasurable impact on your ability to learn whatever other endeavors you take on as you grow up. PewDiePie has sunk a ton of time into Photoshop, for example, so his observation skill was probably higher than the average beginner artist, even though his experience in moving an actual pencil across the page was just as limited. Even without that Photoshop experience though, having the patience and mental fortitude to stick it out through the rough periods when learning is difficult and every fiber of your being is calling you away to go play another game of League of Legends instead, developing that comes from life experience and dedicated time understanding how your own mind works. It's not something you're going to figure out by just moving a pencil across paper for a certain number of hours. Some people get really lucky, I think, and stumble across these answers at a young age. Other people, I think, don't stumble across the right answers, but fumble their way into the wrong answers that just so happen to work. Like little maladaptive behaviors that let them improve fast. Like if you got bullied a lot as a kid, for example, so instead of socializing, you pour all of your time into drawing, that's not really a correct life lesson that you've learned so much, but it might turn you into an incredible, albeit lonely and depressed artist by the age of 15. On that note, I don't believe in talent, not in the way people use the word at least. People talk about it like it's some magical innate ability that you just have within you, something that can't be cultivated or understood and that you either have it or you don't. I hate that. I've always hated it. My experience has been in complete opposition to that. I think talent should be defined more like the concept of karma, where you were born into certain circumstances, you had this set of experiences growing up, and that because of those things you are who you are today. No greater cosmic force intervened, there was no gift you were graced with from God. It's just chance. You just happened to make decisions that worked, you just happened to be born into the right family, or a family wrong in just the right ways, so that the cards just so happen to fall in a way that everybody observes the end result without seeing the everything else that's at play. Like all the hard work that you had to put in and all the things outside of your control that allowed for your success in the first place. The thing is though, that isn't how people use the word talent. They use it to prop somebody else up on a pedestal or to describe something they themselves are not and never could be. But the reality is it's so much more complex than that, and the concept of talent is such a boring simplification that only serves to demotivate people, I think. Like calling someone talented isn't a compliment because you aren't taking note of their hard work, you're basically just calling them lucky. Which, if you're an artist who's poured thousands of hours into your craft, the last thing you want to hear is you're only this good because you got lucky. Like, come on man, it's not like it's wrong, it is a fact that you were lucky in a lot of ways to get into this position. You couldn't learn that instrument if your parents couldn't afford to buy you one, you couldn't learn to draw if you had to work outside of school because your parents couldn't afford to make ends meet, etc. But there isn't a single other profession or category of skill where this would be an acceptable quote-unquote compliment. Anyway, I'll take any opportunity to rant about the concept of talent because I've probably thought about it more than 99% of people that have ever lived, since so much of my life over the last few years has revolved around it. Getting into drawing, I had no idea if I could actually get good at it. I was stubborn and believed I could become the person I wanted to be if I just worked hard enough, but when you grow up in a world that praises people for being gifted, it kind of ingrains into you that if you started late or if you're a slow learner like I very much was, that you just don't have what it takes and that you should cut your losses and give up before you waste away even more of your life, chasing some crazy dream that you want more than anything but were destined to fail at before you even picked up a pencil for the first time. It sounds melodramatic, and it is, let's be real, but what artist hasn't struggled with this? It's pretty universal, I think. You might phrase it in a different way, the core of it might be a little different, but that constant feeling of not being good enough and the comparison to the people around us, that's a universal experience for artists. Non-artists too, but it's kind of the mental health topic in the art world. I can't think of many, or honestly any at all, who haven't struggled with it in some way. For me, looking back over my art journey, I feel pretty conflicted. On the one hand, I'm super proud of how hard my younger self was working, but on the other, there's a lot of embarrassment too about just how bad I was at learning. I drew a lot of the same crap over and over, the same faces at the same angles, the same poses at the same sizes. I could go on and on about all the mistakes I've made along the way. And I probably will, since I've got a lot of video to fill here, but I just genuinely didn't know what I didn't know. I thought I was practicing efficiently. I thought drawing the same things over and over was the correct thing to do. For me, sitting down to draw consistently was already a hard enough challenge at the time. I didn't grow up drawing, so my mind was pretty, I don't know how to put it, averse to anything that required effort. I could play Minecraft all day and binge YouTube on the side, but sitting down to draw meant trying and failing at becoming a better version of myself, and that was just so much harder than anything I'd ever tried to do before. I was already pushing myself so hard just to draw daily and to slowly build up from a single scribble to eventually drawing for hours every day. Attempting to add extra, more dedicated studies on top of that. Like, I think I knew that it would help, but I definitely didn't realize how important smarter practice actually was. But even if I did, I don't know that I could have done it anyway. I was already working so hard just to be scribbling on paper like the stuff you're seeing now. Actually, if my estimate is right, we should be about 15 minutes into the video now, give or take, which is about when my 2018 digital art should be coming up on screen. At this point, I still consider it my early days as an artist since my practice was so inconsistent. I've been drawing daily since December 6th of 2017, but it wasn't until June of 2019 that I really started to ramp up my output. That's when I started drawing for 3 hours or more every single day. Again, the milestones for the number of hours should all be in the description, if not on screen, so that should give you a better idea of how far through we are by now. Looking back over all these sketches as they fly by, I'm sure I could have improved way faster from an absolute beginner if I only knew then what I know now. But most of what I know now isn't art skill differences, it's that general life experience stuff that I was talking about before. The ability to sit and focus for longer stretches of time without my brain calling out in agony. That's something that you get better at as you grow older or wiser. In these early days, drawing felt kinda like doing homework, or I guess like going to the gym. It wasn't something I necessarily enjoyed doing all of the time, but it felt good to be doing. Like I could feel myself becoming a better person, moving more in the direction of who I wanted to be. And that's not something I hear too many artists talk about. It seems like most artists get into drawing because they're bored in school or have nothing to do over the holidays, and so drawing kinda just becomes their default and they fall in love with it kinda just because they had nothing else to do, and so they learned to have fun with it. Or for others, drawing was just the most fun thing, and for whatever reason, video games just couldn't compare. But yeah, that wasn't my experience getting into art at all. For me, it felt more like I was in a rut at the bottom of a pit. I wasn't all that happy, but I loved the idea of working on creative projects and building my own worlds, filling them up with characters, sharing them with people. And so drawing was like my ticket to crafting a better life. If I could learn how to draw, then I could start making things instead of just consuming all the time. It was my way of building something instead of just digging that pit deeper and deeper. I guess I'm saying all of this because no two artists are gonna have the same journey, but it's inevitable that if people start to find this video, they're gonna compare themselves to my journey, which I'm fine with. I'm totally fine with being labeled whatever, the worst, least talented, slowest learning artist in the world, or whatever else people might say. I don't know, man, maybe there's some nice comments down there too. But I'm emphasizing all of this because while this is the full journey from absolute zero to where I am today, you shouldn't make the mistake of thinking, oh, 5,500 hours, got it. If I just fill 70 sketchbooks and draw for a few thousand hours, I'll get to that level as well. Because it really doesn't work like that. My hunch is that most people are probably gonna progress so much faster than I ever could have imagined, since my journey so far has just been so much of me digging myself out of that hole. But equally, I guess it's possible that I'm actually the standard and not an exception. Like maybe all the artists I admire have a whole mountain of drawings just like these, and that everybody stagnates just at different points along the way. Point being, you can watch all of this and observe all the flaws or positives that you wanna, but you should take those observations and see how they apply to your own journey. What do you struggle with that you're gonna look back on and cringe at? Because that's where your focus should probably be, figuring out your own weak points and trying to build them up. And more importantly, those weak points likely won't be as exclusively related to art skill as you'd like them to be. But hey, don't take my word for it, I'm just some guy that knows how to draw kind of okay after a very big investment of time. Let's see here, what other topics did I want to cover? Oh yeah, I guess I should say that I still don't think I'm all that good after 5,500 hours of drawing. Maybe that's obvious given the topic list so far, but I'm also more confident now than ever before that I can actively improve and actually get good at it. A lot of my practice so far has been pretty inefficient, but having made every mistake along the way, I guess I'm starting to stumble into the right answers now. A lot of what I make now is for projects instead of being standalone scribbles, which for me has been a big help with defining the direction that I want to move in and in highlighting the parts that I need to improve at. Last year, I started that painting the entire Pokemon Emerald map project, and I think I improved more across those 50-ish environment paintings than in the hundreds of hours of digital art prior. Having a clear, concrete goal is super helpful, especially when it's baked into a project that you really enjoy working on. Each painting back then felt like a level up since there was something new I wanted to try focusing on with each one. Like new colors, a different camera angle or composition, whatever it was, each painting gave me something new to learn and much more actively grapple with. Whereas with my typical sketchbook stuff previously, I never really had a clear-cut goal. I never really tried to create a finished piece, so the goal of each drawing was much more nebulous. It was just, today I'm practicing figures, today let's focus on faces, which on the surface probably sounds fine, but in practice it was really limiting. If the goal was much more like, okay, today let's create a 4-panel comic, or today let's create a fully rendered piece of fan art, then it would have meant I'd have had a way more clear target to aim for. If I couldn't draw the head at the angle that I wanted to, I would have known exactly where I was weak and what needed focusing on tomorrow. Or if the colors were muddy, I could try re-rendering it the next day and see if I could learn from those mistakes on a second attempt. Even if the end result was a total failure, I would have been learning so much more from one project to the next. This is probably my #1 regret from my whole art journey, to be honest, a lack of projects to look back on. My old art is all rough sketches, just kind of meaningless doodles. It'd be way more exciting to look back on if every day, or at least every month or so, I had a project that I tried putting my all into. But I guess, like I said earlier, I wasn't really capable of that at the time. My target was just digging myself out of that hole or whatever. So it's a shame, makes me sad looking back on what could have been, but I think that's pretty normal as well. Just about everyone feels like this in some sort of way. And more recently, I've been putting way more focus into this, so it's a lesson learned and it'll be just about impossible to forget. Since so much of what I make now is for videos, they kind of require more thought and planning from the get-go. I don't get as much time now to just draw and paint whatever I want for myself, which is a shame. But with these Storytime animations, I'm making art that has so much more value than anything that I ever made before, so that's definitely a bonus that evens things out a little bit. So, about now, assuming my estimate is correct, we should be coming up on my June 2019 art, give or take a month or two. I've written the whole script for this video in advance, so I don't know exactly how it'll line up, but we're probably hovering around Sketchbook 20, roughly, more or less. Anyway, it's at about this time that I started getting way more serious about learning to draw. From June 10th forward, I was timing every drawing session and aiming for 2.5 hours minimum every day, which bumped up to 3 hours and so on over the next year or so. It's no crazy start. I wasn't able to dive into 10-hour days or anything like that, but for where I was, it was a huge step. I started doing Croquis Cafe sketches every morning, which, for those unfamiliar, is an online figure drawing archive. They post photos and videos of models in different angles. It's a super useful resource for learning to draw people. In hindsight, I was still very within my comfort zone, drawing a lot of the same things over and over, but it's easy to criticize after the fact, looking back on where I was. Really, I was working harder than I ever had before, so I shouldn't be too harsh on my 19-year-old self. Or I guess I would have been 21 at the time, or at least coming up on 21 since I was born October of 98. It feels weird to look back on all these sketches because I remember drawing them so clearly. Like, I don't remember all of the individual drawings so much. I mean, of course not, there's thousands of them, but I remember each sketchbook and at what point of my life I was at during each of them. Most of these books I was going through in a couple of weeks. I think I was averaging like 15 to 20 days per sketchbook back in 2019, but the pages are pretty empty and a lot of the drawings were just gesture sketches or simple 5-minute drawings, so the volume was high, but most of it isn't all that noteworthy. These days I'm averaging a sketchbook like, I don't know, more like 1 every 6 months, but at least the quality of learning is higher, and that's also in between video work. I do miss filling up massive amounts of paper like this though. There's just something super satisfying about reaching the end of a sketchbook, sitting down to scan all of the pages, and then sticking it up on my bookshelf, adding it to the collection. I don't really collect things like video games or whatever, but I imagine it's a similar sort of feeling to that, like a rare object you've stumbled across, safely stashed away on your shelf, on display for the rest of time. Except here it's a book full of stories you've crafted and worlds that you're building. It's way more exciting to me. Not that these early sketchbooks were all that much like that, but it's the direction I'm trying to move more in now, since it's way more fun to flick through when you're looking back later on. I've really got to start setting aside the time to draw in my sketchbook again instead of just making art for videos all the time. I love making these Storytime animations, but it's not at all the same as drawing pen on paper. Like, okay, if you flick through the video, you'll probably notice that 2019 has a longer runtime than any other year, so you might think that I just drew more that year, but actually 2021 had the most drawing time, so if we're just going by number of hours, 21 was 1,429 hours. So yeah, even though 2019 2019 was probably the most paper filled, and 2021 was the highest number of hours. As far as actual quality of learning goes, honestly, it was probably 2023 or even this year. The output has been way lower since my focus has had to shift more to video stuff instead of just drawing all day every day, but when I do sit down to draw, I'm way more targeted with it now. I've been working on more of these projects, which, like I said before, gives a way more clear direction, so you can pull so much more experience out of every drawing or painting that you create. Like, I've come to realize more than anything that learning and getting good at a skill, it's really not about mileage. You do need a certain amount of time grappling with the task at hand to actually have the lessons you're learning sink in, but I think I had that advice way overstated in my mind early on. There's a better balance than just draw a lot, which is the advice I always heard. There's a few really good books on this stuff that I kind of learned all of this from, actually. The Art of Learning, The Inner Game of Tennis, and The Talent Code. They all tackle different aspects of how learning works, but all three of them together make for a pretty perfect crash course on how the mind works. A quick summary of each, I guess, would be the Talent Code is all about how learning actually works in the mind, the science behind what's going on, and what good learning actually looks like in practice. Most of the examples are either sports related or for musical instruments, but since it's about the fundamentals of how the mind works, it applies universally. The Inner Game of Tennis then is more about how the two quote-unquote different halves of your mind work together to tackle tasks. Obviously, the mind is more complicated than left brain logical, right brain emotional, but the framework is good for understanding how it works, and the book is largely about how we identify more with the logical side, the part that feels like it's doing all the thinking. This is where your inner voice comes from, all the thoughts that you think of as you, ego, etc. But that in reality, most of everything happening in your life is actually controlled by the emotional side that you don't have any direct control over. You don't control your breathing, you don't control the minute mechanical movements of your arm as you move the pen across the page. So basically the book is about bringing the two together rather than pitting them against each other like we usually do in our everyday lives. When you're getting frustrated because you can't draw that second eye correctly, that's logic brain getting angry at emotional brain for being bad at its job. But in reality, emotional brain is the one doing all of the work, and it's doing a pretty kick-ass job overall. So you'd be better off having the two work together to progress faster and with less headache. Ideally, logical brain is the compass that observes mistakes and decides what direction to move in, while emotional brain is the one that actualizes those plans and tries to make every one of those harebrained schemes actually work. The third book then, The Art of Learning, I guess is similar but leans more on the mental health side of things. He talks way more about cultivating focus, embracing failure, and how it's crucial for long-term success. Also about like what the flow state is and his experience going from being a chess master to a martial arts champion. Since that's a pretty wildly different set of skills, the focus of the book is really on how the art of learning applies the same across the board, no matter what the discipline actually is. None of these books are specifically about drawing, but I really can't recommend them enough. I've learned more from these books than from any other book I've picked up in my life. Also, go watch Dr. K on YouTube. That's my final recommendation. If you know who he is, you know why I'm throwing him in there, and if you don't, TLDR, he's a mental health guy that talks about the mind and how it works. Just trust me, if you care about my opinion at all, he's worth looking up. And if you don't, then I really don't know how you made it this far into my slideshow, but fair enough, I guess. I've always felt like I was a really slow learner, but after reading those books, it changed my perspective on it quite a lot. And looking back on my art journey now is, I don't know, clarifying. Like, for a long time, it felt like drawing was just the thing I was born to be worst at, a skill that I was dedicating my life to, but that it was like, who's that guy that pushes the boulder up the mountain? Sisyphus, the Greek guy? It felt like that, a thing that I was super dedicated to, but that no matter how hard I worked, I wouldn't really see any real results, or that if I did, I was gonna have to work 1,000 times harder than anybody else, because that's what it seemed like. Looking at all these people making fast progression videos on YouTube and posts to Instagram or wherever else, it seemed like I was just different for some reason and that everybody else was naturally good at it. But after reading those books, I don't know, like maybe that stuff is true, it's possible, but also like what makes you think you're so special that you alone are the worst in the world at this one specific thing? Like the ego on my 20-year-old younger self to have felt that way. Now though, it feels a little more like whether or not that is true, there's a ton that I could have been doing differently to progress way faster along the way, or at least if I were to do it over again with the mind that I have today. So that being the case, going forward, I'll probably start to see more significant progress, kind of like I have been over the last year or so. The little things, all those little lessons have just started stacking up high enough, I guess. Or I've made every possible mistake along the way, so all that's left now is the correct way to go about learning. I don't know, something like that. Regardless, I think that if I've somehow managed to claw my way up to the skill level I'm at now, I don't believe for a second that there's a skill ceiling, some upper limit that only the chosen blessed few are able to attain. If I was able to get to where I am today, in spite of how terrible I was at learning along the way, then anybody else absolutely can do the same. And I wouldn't be surprised if they pick it up faster too. So if you're watching this and have any interest in drawing at all, now is your time. Don't trick yourself into thinking you can't do it, or that you'll never get any better, or that you've peaked and it's all downhill from here. If nothing else, I can pretty confidently say that this massive pile of sketchbooks I have is proof that with enough dedication, you absolutely can learn any skill that you want to. Anyway, I could spend another 2.5 hours rambling to try and pad out the video a little bit more, but I feel like I'm already kind of looping a bit. So from this point forward, it'll just be the remaining art in a slideshow with whatever music you're hearing now playing for background noise. Feel free to draw along with this up for inspiration if you wanna, or if you have any follow-up questions about my art journey, leave a comment below and ask away. I'll try answering any that come my way. I feel like this video maybe focused more on the negative than I intended. Like I maybe put too much emphasis on the mistakes I made along the way to get to where I am now, but hopefully not. Hopefully I kept it optimistic overall, generally good vibes and positive, because that's how the bigger picture feels for me. Like the direction I'm moving in is good. I don't usually lean into the negative side of things as much with art, but it felt relevant here, and I guess because it's been more on my mind lately while reviewing all of this old work, it's just, I don't know what came to mind. But it's whatever, that's just how it goes sometimes, I guess. Oh yeah, and you should hit subscribe too, and all of that YouTuber-y sort of thing. Any extra notes on my journey can be found at the very end of the video or in the description. And until next time, bye bye.